First of all, I'm Jacob Gilliam. I live here in Ohio. I'm the head inspector for Dead Man Derby. I've been around derbies for 27 years. I've been running for, this would be 22 years this year. I've been inspecting for 14 years, various stages from the biggest shows to the smallest. And I've seen there's a continuing trend that I tend to see even today that causes a lot of drivers a lot of heartache, and not just heartache, but it just causes them a lot of strife in their life. And a lot of that is we need to learn, one, as promoters, if a guy that only ever runs a stock class comes up to me and says, hey man, I'm going to buy all the biggest and best parts for next season and I'm going to jump up in a class, and we know that that guy has always been a stock class driver, we shouldn't encourage him to then go and stretch himself to the max to jump up to this class where he's most likely not going to have a good time running. And then the only person that ends up looking bad isn't that driver. He's upset with the promoter who says, thinks to themselves in their head, man, I'd love to have that entry. So yeah, go ahead. Yeah, that'd be great. Come on out. Instead of saying, man, you're doing really good at this class. Why don't you just keep, maybe step up one class above it, not the full class. And what we see a lot is we don't do a good assessment of ourselves, our equipment, our life that we still have to live outside of building derby cars. And it just ends up causing us a lot of problems. So this came about last year in October at our fall show. And we have a super stock class that's a pretty good build. And we got guys that are coming through in cars that pass for our limited weld class, which is another level down. And we're asking them, well, are you in the right line? Yeah, man, I'm here to run super stock. And we're like, this whole car would pass for our limited weld class. Well, then those guys go out, and the guy who's built for limited weld blows them away. And that driver is upset at the end of it. Well, you let him do this, or he had more on here, or he did this. But really, that guy was just built how he should have been, and this guy wasn't built how he should have been because he's way out of his comfort zone. Right? And sometimes you do that, and you learn, and it's not a big deal. You just get better, you buy better stuff, you go ahead and run the next class up, right? And you just keep doing that and grinding away at it, and you get better at it. But a lot of times that guy that steps up and runs that class and gets blown away, he's fed up with derbies. He's definitely most likely fed up with your promotion company because he got blown away. Unless he understands, I just didn't have my car built to the max of where it should be. A lot of times they don't though. So the number one question I think that we got to ask ourselves is, what equipment do I have when I'm considering a class that I want to run? Especially at a big money derby. It's not a county fair show. So if I'm thinking I want to run a kicker car, and I literally have nothing to build a kicker car with, and the derby's 6 months away, then I have to start asking myself, okay, I have a job, I have a life, I have kids. Is it feasible for me to spend all the money that I need to spend to buy the kicker car stuff? And will I have time to build the best car that I can build? Or am I going to end up throwing this car together and be disappointed with the results when I could have just bought an entry for a lesser class and went and competed with the equipment that I have? Unfortunately, a lot of times we try to force that. We don't do a necessary kind of evaluation. We just say, that's what I want, and that's what I'm going to do. So that's the number one thing. We have to evaluate the equipment that we have on hand to be able to run, the class that we're thinking about running. Is it feasible for me to do that with the things that I have? Or is it going to, absolutely just completely kill my life in the next 6 months to try to run this show? That's the next question we need to ask. Does the equipment that I have, engine, transmission, rear end, does that allow me to compete in this class that I'm thinking about running in? And we have to be realistic with ourselves. I mean, most likely if you're thinking about running one of the top-notch, top echelon derbies in the country, Metal Mayhem, Bash for Cash, one of our shows, if you're thinking about running one of these derbies and you just have the old smoky engine that you've been running at the county fairs for the last several years, that's most likely not going to get the job done. You're going to be running against $15,000, $20,000 drivetrains, and although that doesn't necessarily mean that that guy's going to win the derby, you have to think to yourself, features are going to be an hour long. The equipment that I have, will it last an hour? Can I go out here, if I make it to the feature, do I have the equipment to compete in the feature at this class in the level of show that I want to run? And that's something that we just got to be honest with ourselves about. Because when we're not, again, what happens is we go there, we got all this time and energy into a car, we're running a class that's above where we're comfortable running, something bad happens, and none of us like to point the finger at ourselves, right? So we automatically assume that it's someone else's fault, it's on someone else, when really, if, you know, just like I said, if those guys would have ran limited well, they'd have had very competitive cars, but they didn't. They stepped up and ran a class a couple levels above where their build was. Something bad happens to them, then they're upset with a lot of other people instead of just recognizing that they're way out of their lane for where they should be. Another question to ask yourself is like, what is my driving style? Okay, if you're someone who just wants to win a Reaper or a Mad Dog, and you're like, I'm a 10-minute driver, why pay a $200 entry for a $10,000 class when you can go build half the build for a one-heat shot and go win the Reaper in that class that's probably, if it pays, gonna pay the same as it pays to run and win a Reaper in a $15,000 class, right? So if my driving style is I'm a 10-minute guy, 15-minute driver, I just want to go blow everything away and just drive as hard as I can, maybe I shouldn't buy a $200 entry for this huge class, knowing that I'm not going out there to try to reap the benefits that that class offers. I'm just going to go out there and try to get my 10, 15-minute run in. So, if that's what your style is, then think, beforehand, do I want to spend the thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to build this car for a 15-minute run when I could build a $500 car, run another class, and still get my 15 minutes of fun out of it, do the same thing I want to do, but in a class that fits what I can do in my lifestyle, right? And I want you all to understand something. This is something that I personally have fought with my whole life. Everything at Derby. I got a buddy who's won the match twice. So when I'm building the car, especially if he's running, I want to go run where he's running. I want to run the class that he's running in. It's not always feasible for me. Make it happen. I do it. Something dumb happens, what happens, I'm upset, then everything's just, this isn't something that I'm trying to put off on you guys that I haven't experienced myself. This is something that I've dealt with, I've lived it. It takes so much to compete at the highest levels, right? So we got to do a realistic assessment of our equipment, our driving style, things like that. What does it take? Okay, so you got a good drivetrain. Are you stepping up to run a full cradle class? Are you going to build the stuff yourself, or do you have to buy it? Because if you're going to have to buy it, I haven't bought a full cradle. I'm guessing $1,500, $2,000 probably for a cradle setup. Anybody bought one? Or we have all of our stuff. I've got, I'm fortunate. I've got friends with plasma tables. All my stuff I built myself. So that's the only thing that's allowed me to be able to build protector cars, right? Because I'm building stuff myself. If I was buying it, it would never be feasible for me to run a full protector class. It's just not in the cards for me. Again, I could struggle, I could make it happen, but then I'm going to get there, something dumb happens. If you don't win any money, now you've spent all this money, and the odds are never in your favor of winning. So again, like I say, we've got to consider that stuff. And another thing is, how much of what I need to compete in the class I want to run do I already have? Do I have enough stuff that I can say, all right, if I buy these 2 or 3 parts or things that I don't have, now I'll be able to compete in this class, right? I'll be able to do it without killing myself. I'll be able to do it without strapping myself and making myself so thin. Is it a class that I realistically believe I can compete in? Again, that comes back to our driving style and our equipment. Being honest with ourselves and what we have. Will it compete at the highest level of shows? Do I have a drivetrain that will last a 45-minute to an hour-long hard heat and another 45-minute to an hour-long feature? We just got to be more honest with ourselves on the things that we have. Another thing is time. Guys, time is the most precious thing that we have, right? That's one thing we use, we never get it back. Doesn't matter what you do, you can't get your time back. So if you have kids, you have a family, and you're trying to step up and go 2 or 3 classes higher than what you're used to running and this is going to be a build that's going to take you months and months and months, are you going to, what do you got to sacrifice to make that happen? At what expense of your time do you have to step up to run another class, Do you have the time, are your kids playing sports, what other things do you have going on in life that are going to make it even more stressful for you to step up a couple levels and do this crazy long, 100-hour build or however many hours that you're going to put into this car? So it's the finances, it's the time, it's the being honest with yourself, your driving style, the equipment that you already have, But the biggest thing for me is the time, okay? I mean, if you don't have the time to put into the car, then you're going to show up, you paid your $200 entry, you bought all these extra parts, you've built this car that's way out of your comfort zone, you're super stressed out when you get there because you're short on time, you spend all the money on the stuff, and then you get there and realize, man, I still didn't put enough time into it. I still don't have the time, I still don't have the kind of build of the guys that I'm running against. So then now we're back to being stressed out while we're at the Derby, something bad happens, when in reality, if we'd have just ran the one heat class that was the next class down, we'd have had a blast. We'd have had less time in the car, we wouldn't have had to buy all the parts, we could have entered that class and went out there and had an absolute blast, just derbying in a class that's going to be a 30 to 40 minute class maybe. If it runs an hour, you might be lucky. But it would be a lot more fun for us. And the last time, I don't know about all y'all, but when I started doing this, it was because it was fun. We make it like a job, and that's what makes it stressful, right? We try to step way up above we try to get it way over our heads because it's a pride thing, right? I got to do this because these guys are doing it. And then we go out there again, something bad happens, and then you got all that stress. You're traveling home, you're thinking all the money that you spent. You didn't, you get to the Derby, you do all these things, especially if you're camping, if you got kids and a wife and you're taking them all to the Derby, and maybe you're paying for your pit crew too, and now you're adding all that money, the cost to be there. When we could have went and had the same 3-day weekend, ran a one heat shot with our equipment that we were comfortable with, not spent nearly as much money, been a lot more comfortable, and ended up in the same, having a lot more fun. And like I said, this isn't for everybody. Some of you think, no, it's no problem, man. I've got the time, I've got the money. It's nothing for me to buy these extra things and compete up a class. So, again, like I said, one of the things is the time. What else do I have going on in my life during the time that I need to build this car? What else is going on that's going to slow me down and take time away? Another thing is with my job and everything else considered, is it realistic to think that I can do this? Is it realistic to think? Now, I'm all for pushing yourself, guys. I'll never say that. I am all for pushing yourself to make yourself a better person. Surround yourself with people that encourage you to do things that will push you to make you a better person. But you have to consider at what expense are you pushing yourself to be a better person, right? Because if I think I'm pushing myself to be a better version of myself by stepping up 3 classes and getting way out of my comfort zone, spending 10 grand I don't have to build the car, taking it away from here, putting it all into these things, and I go there and I get completely blown away. Now my wife's like, you spent all this money, you went there, you sucked, you didn't do any good, you brought all the money, we paid for all of us to be there for the whole weekend, you ran for 15 minutes and you're here. If I would have stayed down in my lane, ran the one heat shot, I had a blast. I could have went and done what I wanted to do. Yeah, it doesn't always pay as much, but if I only have a $1,000 car and running for $2,000, even if you have a $10,000 car and you're running for $2,000 and you win it, it's a lot better odds than it is if I'm stretching myself so thin that I'm stressed out. Because one, then you're not going to drive good. It's going to affect your driving ability because you're out there thinking to yourself, I have to do good here. You're not relaxed. You're not having fun on the track, right? You're not out there thinking, yeah, this is cool, man. I'm just going to relax. I love derbying. I'm just going to have fun. The guys that most likely are winning are those guys who are driving relaxed. They're not out there like, oh man, I got to save the front end because I got to try when my wife's here. She's mad that, we barely got here. I got to win this derby. I got to win some money. The guy that's out there is like, I'm going to win, right? It was easy for me to get here. I got no stress. I'm relaxed. I'm cool. Got all kinds of spare parts. It's no big deal if I break something, whatever. He's out there, he's having fun, he's derbying, and you're out there and you're on the edge of your seat the whole time like, oh, somebody get in the wheel, I hope they didn't break anything. Man, I only got limited parts back at the truck because I'm 3 stages above where I should be right now, right? It's a big thing in your head too, you know, like I say with that guy who, I don't want to say afford, because no one likes to hear they can't afford something, right? I mean, no one likes to hear that. But that guy who didn't struggle to get there, he's cool as a cucumber while he's derbying, right? He's not stressed out. He's not even worried about it because he's like, I'm good. Like, doesn't matter what happens here. If I win, that's great. If I don't win, I got parts, I'll fix it, you know, whatever. But when you're out there derbying because you have to try to win, it's no fun for you. You're killing yourself inside your head. The whole time you're at the derby, everything that happens is super stressful for you, right? So we gotta weigh all these different things out before we decide that we're gonna jump up 2 or 3 classes above our comfort level. You know, it's different if one class is a front plate lower cradle pulley protector class, and I want to step up to the next class where now I can run a transmission brace and weld the deck lid instead of wiring stuff. Okay, that's fairly marginal. That's an easy jump to make. But if I'm a guy that only has a front plate lower cradle pulley protector, and I don't have a transmission brace, I don't have a distributor protector, and all of a sudden I want to run a full protector class where you can fully weld your trunk and you can do all this work, that's a lot of extra time. It's a lot of extra money in the parts that I've got to buy to step up and compete in this class. So there's just so many different things that we need to start weighing out and asking ourselves, you know, like I say, I'm all for pushing yourself to grind out something better, to do something a little harder than you have. But we have to consider, there's a movie I used to like when I was younger, I haven't watched it for a long time, but in the movie, one of the questions they ask is, you got to consider if the juice is worth the squeeze. Right? Is the juice you get is the juice that you're going to get from what you're doing worth the time it takes to squeeze whatever you're getting the juice from? Okay? So is the juice worth the squeeze? Is it time? If I go there considering all possible outcomes and something stupid happens, was it worth it? Am I going to feel like, you know what? I did the absolute best I could to get there, and I'm okay with the fact that something bad just happened. Whatever, that's derby, right? You're gonna break something. So I broke something, no big deal. It was totally worth it. Or are you gonna go there, something dumb's gonna happen, and you're gonna spend the whole drive home like, oh my gosh, man, what did I do? Like, why did I do this? This was the worst thing ever. You get home, and then you don't want to touch the car, even if you have a car lift. You don't want to work on it because you hate the thing. You absolutely hate it. It becomes everything negative for you, right? You just don't want anything to do with it. So again, like I said, it's just all these different things that we need to start considering. And I'll be honest with you, again, a lot of that comes back to us promoters. Because as a promoter, we want your entry. So rather, a lot of times, we have to be better about telling you, if we know you're a stock guy, and you're doing good there, we need to encourage you to continue to get better in that class. Now, if you're the guy that comes out and you're running the stock class, you're winning 4, 5, 6 shows a year, and you're like, man, I think I'm going to make the jump to pro stock. That's logical for you. You're winning 4, 5, or 6 shows a year. But if you're the guy that's struggling in the stock class, and then you go, I think I'm going to jump up to pro stock. Like I said earlier, as a promoter, we're like, yeah, be another entry. Yeah, man, you should do that. Whereas what we need to say is, man, I tell you what, you're getting really close in the stock class. Why don't you run a couple more of them shows this year, grind that out, and see if you can get yourself over that edge. Then when you get over that edge, then jump up and try to get over the ledge at the next level. Don't just say, well, I'm not doing any good here, so what would be better for me is jumping 3 classes out of my comfort zone when I'm already not doing good here, but all of a sudden it's going to be better if I spend a whole bunch more money and a whole bunch more time and go way out of my comfort zone to do it, right? That's very rarely going to be the case. So it's just all these different things. Like I said, I mean, as promoters, we have to get better about not encouraging guys to do something that's not going to be good for them, right? We have to talk to them. We have to try to help them find the class where they fit in instead of just saying, yeah, no, that'd be a great idea. Come on out, run that class. You know, I mean, that's something that I wish we could have talked about last night. We didn't get a chance to talk about it while all of us promoters were in here, but we have to get better about, as promoters, helping guide you drivers into the areas where we think you'll succeed, instead of just wanting that entry and encouraging you to do something that you're probably not going to have a lot of fun at, not going to be super successful with. I mean, there's not really a whole lot more on this topic. It's us. It's self-reflecting, being honest with ourselves about whether what we're doing is something is feasible for us, right? I mean, that's, like I said, if you're struggling at a lower level, jumping 2 or 3 levels up is not something that makes sense for you. So let's be honest with ourselves, because in the end, it's going to leave you with less heartache. It's going to leave you not being upset with a promoter who's doing a good job, who's actually giving out a good inspection. But because you were underbuilt, and this guy built his car to the maximum of everything, his car bends your car. It doesn't mean his car was cheated, but you had a car that could have ran 2 classes lower. He had a car that was built for that class. So in the end, it just saves everybody a lot of heartache, a lot of headaches. If we just start understanding where our zone is, where our lane is, and staying in it. So it all actually went a little bit faster. I originally thought it was supposed to be about a half an hour. Frankie had me down for 45 minutes. So, does anybody have any questions or anything? On anything? Again, like I said, I'm speaking from experience, y'all. This is something, especially when my wife and I were younger, and we didn't have the best jobs, and I just forced it. I just made it happen. I'm going to compete at this level, no matter what. And I just forced myself to keep going up because that's what my buddies were doing. I don't want to run with my buddies. When I look back on it and think, man, if I would have 10, 15 years ago thought to myself, let me just stay right here in my lane, build the build I'm comfortable with, that's not going to kill me. How much different? How much different would my position in derbies be now, as the way I look at running? Because at the point I'm at now, I'm still building these. Last year I ran turn back the clock. It's a very labor-intensive build. It's a very intense build. It took a wagon, a lot of time, a lot of money, and in the end of it, I took the car home. I had that you couldn't have a worse weekend of derbying basically than I did, right? I took that car home. I didn't pull the engine out of it until January. I never touched it. It became the most expensive storage shelf you've ever had in your garage in your life, right? So I finally pulled the drivetrain out of it. I didn't even take any of the bolt ends out and just put it outside. I just rolled it outside because I hate that car. I put everything I had into it. And then I thought after I ran it, for one, I was mad at my buddy because if anybody knows TJ convinced me to run that class when I was supposed to run the Palmetto Derby down in South Carolina that was a way easier build. And he's like, man, run the backstreet. I'm like, I've got everything to do it. Sure, I'll do that. I did. Had a bad weekend, and now I've got a wagon sitting in my driveway that I don't even want to touch. Yeah, Frankie.
Yeah, listening to you there, from a promoter's standpoint, I always see that guy that does he does get into over his head. It seems like, and it's probably a lot of the frustration that you feel. And having to be, you have to put your last dollar, you have to put everything you had into it to get there. Because it seems like when there is issues or things like that, a lot of that comes with the frustration of you gave it all you had, everything you put into it, but it just wasn't quite what the other guys had. It's not just what you didn't. It's just a different level as it's said. I find it, if you stay in your lane and be successful there, then it's a lot better experience, both from a promoter and inspector perspective, and as a driver. Because when you do get it over your head, usually it sucks because, like I said, some days you're above, some days you're the windshield. There you go. But a lot of the things that arise at a derby, well, this guy's a favorite, this guy's this, or this guy's that, that's probably not the issue. Most of the times, to be honest, we're seeing somebody in over their head, and it's frustration. We get it as a promoter. Jacob gets it as a inspector, especially he sees what you get through, and he knows the rule set, and he knows what the other cars are built to. And that's gonna be a bad experience, because he gets it. So, just food for thought. I wanna thank Jacob and Dead Man for coming to be a great part of this breakout session. It's something, I'm here because we talked to Dead Man. It's kind of near and dear. This staying in your lane thing is near and dear to my heart too, because I want everybody to be successful. But I think everybody has a lane, and when I see you try or get out of that lane, there's going to be some disappointment, there's going to be some frustration, maybe to get to that next level. And unfortunately, the promoter or the inspector, the guy that gets that. But we get it. So, great job.
To speak on that point real quick, I'll give you guys a prime example. So last year, my wife and I were able to adopt our son. We got another placement, right? Okay, so life changed a lot. We went from no kids to a 12-year-old that's growing like a weed. He's 13 now, right? So a lot of life changes happen. So my wife comes to me a couple months before the bash. She says, hey, if you want to make this happen, you got to find a way to make some extra money. Now for about 10 years, I've had a 1953 Henry J. Gasser project sitting behind my garage. I follow a guy on Facebook that lives about 40 minutes from me. He's got 5 now. I'm like, all right, I got it. I need to make some extra money. I'm going to sell the Henry J. I sold the Henry J. I went to the bash. I had a horrible weekend at the bash. Now what do I got? I got a half tore up derby car in my garage, and I don't have my Henry J anymore. No, I'll be honest. My wife supports me 100%. She don't get mad because I make sure that I'm not taking from bills and things like that to build my car. But it's a disappointment with myself, because why didn't I just call it then and say, all right, well, if I'm at the point I need to sell this project car, then I should probably just say, all right, I'm not making it to the derby, right? I should just stop right now, keep my project car, work on the car throughout the summer, and take it somewhere else. But instead, there again, I want to get out of my lane. I want to go out with my buddies because they're all running. I want to be with them. So that's something you don't get back, right? That's something that's gone now. And for sure, the guy that bought it isn't going to sell it back to me for what I sold it to him for. So that's just, like I said, it's something that I've been through in life. I know it causes a lot of stress. So when you guys are thinking about where you want to run, what classes you want to run, weigh out your options. Weigh out your options. Don't just automatically jump in where all your buddies are going, because maybe they're more comfortable doing it than you are. Maybe they don't have any kids. Maybe they have a better job. Maybe they have this, maybe they have that. But weigh out your options and do what's best for you, not what's going to make your buddies happy, right? Because you still have your own life to live aside from what they're doing. So I appreciate getting the chance to do this. Like I say, last year, Frankie and I and Mark were out on the track at our fall show, and we were looking at a guy's car that was underbuilt, blown away. He's complaining about other people's cars, and I said, next year I'd like to talk. It's been riding on my brain for a long time. I'd like to talk about this. Frankie and Mark agreed, and we were able to get it together. So, like I said, thanks for coming out. I appreciate you guys hearing me and taking time to listen.
Thanks, Jacob.